Warriors, this is the Spartan Underground. And now, your host, James 300 Foster.
Hey friends, welcome to episode 11 of the Spartan Underground podcast. I realize it's been a while, looking to get back on track here. This is our year-end special Star Wars episode, of course with the release of The Last Jedi. Lots of different opinions on that from all different sides, so a lot of you may already know this, but I'm a big nerd, both literally and figuratively, so Star Wars has been a big part of my life ever since I was a kid. So this episode I had my brother-in-law on, and he's an even bigger Star Wars fan than me, I think. He knows a lot more than I do. Maybe not a bigger fan, as my level of fandom is pretty high, but as far as knowing a lot of the smaller details, the guy's like a Star Wars encyclopedia. So this episode, as well as every episode of the Spartan Underground podcast, is brought to you by our friends at Show You Roll, as well as Albino and Preto. So best kimonos, best apparel on the market, jiu-jitsu industry, there is none better. I basically say that they're like the Apple or Nike of the jiu-jitsu world. So go on over, check out showyourroll.com. That's SHOYOROLL.com, as well as albinoandpreto.com. Check out all the gear, all the different things you can get there, and make sure to show them some love. Anyhow, I hope you guys really enjoy this episode. I realize it's not jiu-jitsu related, so to speak, but I know a lot of you guys out there have a love of Star Wars, so hopefully you can find some enjoyment in this episode. And this will kick us off for the last episode of the year and bring us on into the new year. All right, guys. Hope you enjoy it. Take care. What's up, Spartan Warriors? We're back with our year-end Star Wars special. I'm real excited. I have my brother-in-law, Brian, here with me. What's up, Brian? How you doing?
Pretty good. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's awesome to have you here. Of course, we got our big spoiler warning because we're going to be discussing all things The Last Jedi and speculation on upcoming movies and all that. So if you don't want to hear that kind of stuff, I suggest that you go find a different episode of this podcast or another podcast to listen to. So I thought it'd be good if we kind of started out by talking about how each one of us got into Star Wars. So I'll go ahead and let you go first, kind of talk about like what you like about Star Wars, how you got into it as a kid and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for me it was, it's been part of my life pretty much since conception, as weird as that sounds. My parents' first date was a Star Wars film, and I just watched it as a kid pretty much consistently. Back then, I think the VHSs were all we had, and we mostly watched them on TV when they would be on. Every once in a while they do the little specials over the weekend. They play the trilogy, and so we'd watch them pretty consistently. A big bucket of popcorn with my brothers and sisters, and we'd go from there, and just collected the toys, and was obsessed with pretty much anything that had a lightsaber at that point.
That's awesome. Hey, did you end up ever seeing the non-altered version of the original trilogy, or were the VHSs that you watched the George Lucas CG modified versions?
The George Lucas, I wish I had this technology in the 80s versions. No, I actually still own a VCR for the sole purpose of the original unaltered versions that I own on VHS. So every once in a while I'll get an itch and pop that out and watch the unaltered cuts.
And in that version, Han shot first, right?
Han always shot first. And when I watch the Blu-ray versions, I just close my eyes there and imagine him shooting first before Greedo takes a shot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
I'm
should
a
never have
purist.
changed it. I was looking at that little pop figure I got, and they even make it look like, Guido's got his gun out and
Like
ready,
he's trying to shoot?
Like
well,
he's trying to shoot.
In the film, he does
he
have
did
his gun
have it out.
He does have the gun out, but he doesn't pull the trigger until after Han shoots him. It's more of like he gets hit with the blaster bolt, and then it's almost like a twitch of his finger is what shoots second. And I thought that was a pretty key part of Han's character, right? I mean, you have this guy that your hero is about to go on his ship and be sort of smuggled into Alderaan with, and now this guy just shot somebody, right? That was part of Han's allure as a character, was that this guy he's a murderer, and our hero's going to go ride in a ship with him, and he's going to join the party, if you will. And so I think that was part of what made him so interesting, and then George went and changed it. So.
Yeah, that really set the tone for the character and kind of, let you were seeing something, kind of a different take on a vigilante scoundrel type of character that we'd never seen before in a lot of movies. So it's too bad that they went and changed that. It was funny, Amy and I were talking about, obviously you're married to Amy's sister, you're my brother-in-law, and we're like, man, what are the odds that, both sisters ended up marrying like nerds who were into Star Wars and comic books and all these things. It was kind of funny to me. And that goes back to what you were talking about with, childhood and Star Wars. My mom was actually pregnant with me when she saw the first Star Wars.
Oh.
So I didn't.
So you are the chosen one.
I'm the chosen one. I'm going to bring balance. But yeah, she was pregnant with me when she saw the first Star Wars. My parents always really been into sci-fi and all those types of things, sci-fi books, and then I remember vaguely going to see Empire with my mom, and that was really cool. And of course, Return of the Jedi, and then getting into the prequels and everything, being there on opening day for all of those. And say what you will, but as a Star Wars fan, I think we all enjoyed certain aspects of those movies.
I am actually not one of the original trilogy purists in that regard. I enjoy the prequels. There are a lot of things about them I actually really do enjoy. I also am a sort of a continuity obsessed person, so to me, I don't think you can have the Star Wars saga without the prequels at this point. I think we just have to come to that acceptance.
Yeah, and take from them the parts that you enjoy and kind of block out the parts that you don't enjoy.
Yeah, like I don't know, 85% of Attack of the Clones, pretty much. I can block out of my head with all the love story stuff. I mean, it's obviously important to know how Padme and Anakin got together and how their relationship started, but I don't need 2 hours of that and then half an hour of actual Clone Wars, fighting on Geonosis and Yoda with a lightsaber. I could have done more of that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think out of those three, I enjoyed Revenge of the Sith most. There was aspects of the other ones that I really enjoyed. Of course, Darth Maul.
Oh yeah,
it's like
for sure.
Totally made Episode 1.
In my opinion, and it's just opinion, but for me, Phantom Menace has the best lightsaber battle in pretty much any of the films. The Duel of the Fates is my favorite. I have to admit also that Qui-Gon Jinn is kind of my favorite Jedi.
Yeah, he was a badass.
I really enjoyed the character, and I'm also a big Liam Neeson fan, so add those two together, and it was a match made in heaven for me. So I'm a bit biased in that regard. And then Darth Maul. I mean, you can't go wrong with Darth Maul, and Ewan McGregor did a great job as Obi-Wan. So there are, again, things from Phantom Menace I really enjoy. It's a fun movie. It's a bad movie, don't get me wrong. But it's a fun movie to watch. I find myself popping that one in once in a while and shamelessly enjoying it. So, again, prequels. There's a lot of great things in there, and there's some bad stuff. But getting onto the Revenge of the Sith topic, that's the one for me. I mean, I disliked Attack of the Clones the most out of the prequel films, but Revenge of the Sith is the one that I think is the best all-around movie, but it's the one I pick apart the most. There's so many things in there I would love to have changed and to just modify and tweak a little bit here and there. But again, it's still the best, I think, of the prequel trilogy. It's just... It's George's vision. It's George Lucas's vision. You kind of have to accept that and roll with it, you know?
Yeah, and Revenge of the Sith was quite a bit darker, I think, than the other
Right.
two, which it had to be, considering the subject matter of Anakin, fully going over to the dark side and everything. It needed to be a darker movie, but
Right.
on the line of having opinions and having things about these movies that, we don't necessarily enjoy, but we still love them because they're Star Wars movies. Let's go into our thoughts on
The Last
initial thoughts on The Last Jedi. We both got to see it at the same time at the same theater,
Yep.
and I think we both kind of came out feeling a little conflicted.
Yeah, definitely. I had a weird feeling when I left the theater after watching that. It could have been because it was 1:30 in the morning and I have kids and don't stay up that late anymore. But, it was... I enjoyed the film. I know in my heart I liked it, and there were a lot of things about it that I was just mulling over and kind of, my brain was just going a mile a minute, just trying to process everything. But I felt that there was a big part of me that just didn't know what had happened and hadn't really dealt with the gravity of it yet, and so I think you probably follow under the same feelings about it. But
yeah, I definitely felt the same way, and I knew I enjoyed it, but it really made me think.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the fact, I was kind of going, man, that's kind of cool. Isn't that why we go to movies, is to, not see the same thing all the time and actually, when you're thinking about a movie for days afterwards, I think that's pretty cool, and that says something about what they did.
Well, because it made you feel something. It made you think. Even if
Absolutely.
what you felt was rage because you didn't like the direction it went, it made you think about it. It made you feel something. I think that's the important thing to take home from that. Is it makes you think, and it makes you process those things and mull it over. And that's kind of the great thing about Star Wars, is you can sit and take details from the most minute aspects of the film and dissect them. And there's a backstory and a world involved in all that. And just like with every decision they've made, it's all done for some reason, and there's a reason why everyone reads books and buys, novels about characters that you see for 2 seconds on screen, because there's always a backstory for them, and there's always a reason why these things are done.
Absolutely. And, I would much rather have seen that, all things aside. I would have much rather gone in and seen something different, a different take on Star Wars like we did, than go in and have everything be answered for us and have everything go the way that we kind of thought it was going to go.
For sure.
Because to me, that doesn't leave as much room to continue. And I don't know about you. Well, I do know, because I know what you're going to say, but I want to see Star Wars for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
I want your kids to be able to grow up with Star Wars. I want Star Wars to be around when we're long gone, and I don't think you can do that if you stick to the same old thing.
If you keep recycling the same formula, it just isn't going to work. And I think that was one of the things that J.J. Abrams, to his credit, was trying to give people a movie that seemed familiar in a nostalgic sense with The Force Awakens, was to kind of bring back that familiarity. And the very first line of the film is Lor Santeca saying, "This is the first step to setting things straight." I'm going to butcher that line, but
right.
Something to that effect of making things right. And a lot of people took that as sort of a jab at George Lucas for the prequels and saying, we're going to put this thing back on track and get this thing going the right way. However, that was also the biggest complaint people had about the film, was it was too much like A New Hope. I mean, there were a million similarities between the two. And so I'm not quite sure if Rian Johnson had the intention of kind of directly reacting to that aspect of The Force Awakens, but I got the impression from this film that he took a lot of the things that had been built up and these little threads that were being left open by The Force Awakens and immediately cut some of them down to leave you in a sense, leaving that film going, I have no idea what's going to happen next.
I got this sense that he purposefully, or if it wasn't purposeful, it very much, had an intended effect of, hey guys, you think I'm going to make this just like a copy of Empire? Well, here, digest this.
Yeah.
I'm going to make it so much different than anything you've ever seen.
Right.
So intentional or not, it definitely wasn't a clone of any one of those movies. If
sure.
anything, it had a lot of elements from Jedi in it.
It did, yeah. It almost seemed as if they took parts of Empire and Jedi and sort of mashed them together without being too obvious about it. But you're totally right. I mean, the Snoke throne room scene is mimicking everything about the Emperor's throne room on the Death Star.
Yep, even having her look out and see, your friends are done for, basically.
Even the elevator. In the elevator with Kylo Ren and Rey going up the elevator and entering the throne room, if you look at Jedi, that's exactly what Vader and Luke did. They're even standing on the same side of the elevator, So it's like there's so many similarities between those two.
There's a lot of callbacks.
And again, that's what I love so much about Star Wars is there's all these callbacks and these little continuity details that if you obsess over it like a lot of us do, you're going to pick those things up. But it's the interesting thing I think about The Last Jedi with some of the backlash is everyone's getting on Rian Johnson about it. But I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote Empire, also was one of the writers on The Last Jedi. So he had a very big part in that. So you take a guy who is largely credited with one of the greatest movies of all time, my favorite movie of all time. He and Irvin Kershner did a great job with Empire Strikes Back, but this guy was also part of The Last Jedi and also helped write the script and help build the story. And people are just trashing on him and trashing on Rian Johnson, but in reality, it's the same guy who wrote pretty much everyone's favorite Star Wars movie. So it is a bit interesting how the same person can be on two sides of that coin, and be getting a lot of hate and vitriol for one film, but also a lot of praise for another.
Yeah, most definitely. I think we should kind of go over, what we didn't like about it.
Start with the negative and end with the positive?
Yeah, pull the Band-Aid off quickly type of thing. So I'll go first. I think the main thing, and I've seen it, we both seen it twice. We both saw it Thursday late and then again on Saturday morning. And for me, initially, what bugged me the most was the whole Rose and Finn arc and the Canto Bight stuff, the casino world. A lot of that stuff, I felt it was out of place, and I kind of felt like they wasted the character of Finn a little bit, like they didn't give him enough screen time.
True.
I felt like I much rather would have seen like him and Poe on that adventure.
Yeah,
or something.
I believe so. Looking at the art of the Last Jedi book, I believe that was the intention, was to have Poe and Finn on that journey together. But when they were coming around to pulling the story together, they felt like they needed somebody who was going to challenge Finn, and he was not going to get along with. And so they felt like, given their past, which, reminding everyone, this movie takes place immediately after Force Awakens. So these characters have really only known each other for about 2.5 to 3 weeks total, from where you meet them in The Force Awakens to The Last Jedi. Keep that in mind. These characters have only really been together for about 3.5 weeks or so. So it's not a whole lot of time, but again, they were worried that the relationship that Poe and Finn had already built at this point wouldn't have led to any conflict between the two characters. So it would have just kind of been this fun buddy movie of them going to some casino and trying to find a hacker, and so they brought a new character in there to add some conflict there.
Right, and that makes sense. And I can handle that. The whole romance aspect seemed really forced because there was nothing
going on
other than her kind of being a fan of his and kind of being starstruck by him.
Right.
There was really nothing leading up to that scene where she basically professes her love for him to show that there was any kind of romantic connection, and nothing from his end showing any kind of romantic interest in her.
Right.
That I could pick up, even in seeing it a couple of times. So stuff like that bothers me. I felt like they did the same thing in was it Age of Ultron, Avengers, with Bruce Banner and
Black
Widow.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
wait, where's this coming from?
This whole love story comes out of the middle of nowhere. And
Yeah.
It's just, you're kind of having to go, okay, I got to suspend belief a bit here, which is funny when you think about it. In a movie that, whether it be Age of Ultron or Star Wars, that has all these fantasy elements and space travel and warps, and all that stuff. Well, warps, what's the word? Hyperspace travel and lightsabers and all that. The thing you have to suspend your belief on is how fast someone can fall in love with someone else, right?
Yeah.
It sounds ridiculous, but that's the truth. You kind of have to go, okay, it's sort of psychologically proven that in times of stress, people can galvanize relationships quickly. But I agree with you that it did seem a bit forced. Again,
pun intended.
Yeah, I gotta watch that. But one of the things that I had also read or picked up was that they had intended on the movie being about a half an hour longer. And a bunch of the stuff that got cut out was Canto Bight.
Yep.
And so I think some of where you were going to pick up the hints about that relationship were some of those scenes. And that's yet to be seen. We don't know if that's true or not, but speculating, myself, that's where I think you were supposed to get some hints to that relationship building.
Yeah.
And they just kind of had to make you accept it without really giving you any backstory on it.
Yeah, maybe it'll make more sense when we get the deleted scenes, because I did also hear that a ton of the stuff is scenes with Rose and Finn and DJ infiltrating the ship and everything. Right. So maybe that'll kind of build a little more continuity with that arc of the story. Yeah. I will say that the second time I saw it, though, it didn't bug me as much.
Well, and I think I don't want to get off track again, but I think what you just said is exactly the way I felt about the film. Was seeing it the second time, things didn't bother me as much. Going back to what we said about our initial reactions about the film, it took me a while to accept what I just watched. And I'll save that final thought for the end here, but it was a scenario where after watching it the second time, I wasn't looking for things I was hoping were going to happen. I just accepted the movie for what it was and just watched it the second time.
Yeah, me too.
I needed to sort of process all that the first time and then relax and enjoy it the second time. And I left the theater the second viewing much, much happier with the film than I had the first time. Not that Disney needs more of anyone's money, but I do recommend seeing it more than once. Whether you wait for it to come out on Redbox or whatever digital download service you use, watch it again a second time. Give it another viewing, and I think people will enjoy it a lot more.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think a lot of the backlash and stuff is getting blown out of proportion, because everybody, with the exception of one of my friends that I've talked to, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I know one guy who hated it.
Yeah.
And even his hatred of it was more of he just didn't feel like it was, it could have been, he felt like it could have been handled differently and handled better.
Yeah, and the one guy that I know that really disliked it, liked a lot of things about it.
Right.
Like, he even liked a lot of the stuff that other people didn't like.
Interesting.
So it was like, okay, well, this movie is getting a lot of different, reactions and inciting a lot of different feelings in people.
Yeah. Yeah, because again, that's what Star Wars does to people. I think, we're at a point now where people in their, 30s and early 40s sort of grew up with these films, and so there is a very real attachment to them, and almost like a childlike attachment to them, that people take them very seriously, even though they're basically kids' movies in space. That's what they're made for. But I think we all latch onto those. There's some resemblance of our childhood that we can still tap into once in a while. And so I think that's what's happening with a lot of people is they're, going into the biggest major spoiler here, is your hero from your childhood dies in this film. He dies, right? I mean, that I think was the thing for me. I had to realize the second time I watched it was my odd, weird feeling in the pit of my stomach after seeing it the first time was coming to terms with the fact that Luke he's gone. That his life ended on essentially a sour note, right? With everything that happened with Kylo Ren and Ben Solo and the First Order coming to power and him exiling himself. You want for these characters to end up living happily ever after, and Luke goes on and builds the new Jedi order, and it's 1,000 years of peace and happiness and them defending the galaxy, and they ride off into the sunset. That doesn't happen. Luke basically rides off into a binary sunset, but in this film it doesn't happen the way you want it to. So it's that attachment and the caring for those characters that I think is hard for people to process in this movie. And when you leave there knowing that Luke Skywalker physically is gone, it hits you pretty hard, and then you're seeing a part of your childhood die. And we're living in a time where, we're having to come to terms with a lot of really serious things, and this is the one thing people are looking for escape on, and they didn't get it. And they left there going, this too? Really?
Yeah.
That's taken from me too? So...
Yeah, it's pretty deep when you think about it, and it's one of those things where I think the biggest stumbling block for the people that legitimately didn't enjoy the movie, a large portion of them, it was due to not seeing what they wanted to happen.
Well, for sure. I mean, the whole Snoke theories, all those things about him being Darth Plagueis, which we bought into quite a bit.
Yep.
I mean, we were comparing John Williams' soundtrack to the Emperor, and speaking to Anakin in Revenge of the Sith, and the songs that they played for him in The Force Awakens. We were doing all these things, and all these theories about who he was and where he came from, and it basically amounted to him not even mattering, right? Like,
yep, they just threw it right on its head, and we're like, deal with this.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, as soon as I started to see in the film where the lightsaber was turning towards Snoke, I was kind of thinking to myself, no way, they're not going to do this, really? He's going to do this right now? And sure enough, he gets Darth Mauled.
So what was your biggest complaint or biggest thing that you didn't like?
My biggest issue with it was something really minor. It was Canto Bight. That whole arc for me seemed a little bit forced. It was almost like I actually kind of chuckled to myself a bit after watching it, because it reminded me of something I didn't realize about Raiders of the Lost Ark until after I heard it. And it was actually on the Big Bang Theory that one of the characters brings it up, was that in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones does nothing to affect the plot of the film. Nothing. If you watch it from start to finish, if he had just let the Nazis grab the Ark, take it back to Berlin, and open it in front of Hitler, World War II never would have become what it was. He actually negatively affects history because he's getting in the way. And so he actually serves nothing for the plot. He's just a guy. I felt like Finn was that in this movie. He didn't really help with the plot at all. I mean, nothing about what they did, going to Canto Bight and, going on to the supremacy and all that stuff, none of it affected anything. They essentially get caught. DJ turns on him and turns him in, and the only thing that he was able to do was take out Phasma. That was it. His whole purpose in the film seemed to me that he was on a collision course with Captain Phasma, and it was a vehicle to get rid of her character and build a love triangle between Rey, Finn, and Rose.
I honestly think initially, and I don't know if this will come out, but I have a feeling that they were going to let Finn be heroic and run himself into the...
I'm not surprised that that's true
into
either.
the canon and all of that, because I really felt like that was his saving grace in this film.
It was his Han Solo moment.
He was, and I was so surprised when she knocked him out of the way, and then we get the whole, we gotta fight for what we love thing, and...
Yep, it mirrors a lot of Han Solo going into Carbonite, where he's sort of, in the situation where he's going to get taken out of the equation, and then there's this admission of love and all that stuff. Part of me really thought that was those two things were sort of mirroring each other a little bit. But yeah, I guess going back to my negative reactions, Canto Bight was an immediate one for me. I had just gotten through and read the Canto Bight book, which built up this casino environment, which is very much like Las Vegas, where it's got this shady underbelly that you don't see on top of the glitz and glamour, and there's all these people betraying each other and stabbing each other in the back, and they built up these really interesting characters.
And that wasn't reflected in the movie
at all. If you think about it, they don't interact with anyone in the casino aside from the security guards that try to take them away.
Right.
That's it. They didn't talk to anyone. They didn't play a game. There could have been some scenario where they had to win a game of sabacc, which would have been great because you finally get to see the card game that Han Solo wins the Falcon on. You don't see any of that stuff. They had this moment where they could have done a lot of really cool things, and they just didn't do it. And I think a lot of that's due to time constraints, and maybe that was part of the deleted scenes that they had to remove. But I just felt like they could have spent some more time there, and there was all these interesting aliens and these things going on. In fact, the really short lizard-looking aliens they show, there's like 3 of them. Those aliens in the book are awesome. They're great characters in the Canto Bight book, and I was really looking forward to seeing them and maybe having them interact on screen a bit. One of them, I think, was played by Warwick Davis, in fact. But nothing from those guys. And so that part bugged me because I had literally just finished the book a couple days before that. And so I was kind of really amped to see a bit more of that world, and we got nothing. We just got fathers running through the casino and destroying everything.
And the crazy little opera lady.
Oh, yeah. She's actually a big part of the book, too. She's a really shady character, and she, I believe, is actually the owner of the casino so that they're in. So she's got a whole backstory, and it could have been really great, but I think that part was just, it was left out for whatever reason, for time constraints.
Probably one of those things where it wouldn't have bugged you as much if you hadn't read the book going into that, you think?
Maybe, yeah. And I think there again, the number 2 issue I think I had with the film was Captain Phasma. I had read the Phasma book as well, so little backstory here. I went on a tear, and I say read, but I really listened to them on audio, but I got the Audible versions of all these books that led up to The Last Jedi, and I powered through them from Thanksgiving all the way to the release of the film. And so I went through all of them, and Captain Phasma, her character is so cool, and she has so many layers of depth to her in this novel. And the author, I think it was Delilah Dawson who wrote it, did a great job of building this character, this mysterious character you knew almost nothing about from Force Awakens, and making her into this really, deep character that has, all these motives and just survival instinct, and she's out for herself and nobody else. Yeah,
not really loyal to the Empire.
Yeah, you'll
or the First Order in this instance.
And I do recommend people reading that. It's like, if I had to describe the book, it's almost as if it's like Mad Max meets Star Wars, like Mad Max Fury Road meets Star Wars, and they do a great job of building up General Hux's dad. So Brendel Hux, you learn a lot about him and where he is in the movies and why he's not there. So you get a lot of story on that, a lot more into General Armitage Hux's character, the one that's you see in the films. So there's a lot of really cool details in that book. And even where she gets her armor, how she makes it, what it's made out of. You learn all these things too. But then they just didn't use any of that. And the whole time she's laying on the ground on the ship as it's falling apart, I just kept saying, get up, get up.
Yeah.
Or like they'd show her fall through the fire, and they'd show a short scene of her hitting the ground, getting up and getting into a pod and escaping, because there's so much there. And on top of that, you get an actress,
Gwendolyn Christie's amazing
to play this character, and you don't give her anything to do with it. I mean, she could have owned that character, and I think for what she had, she did a great job, but she's such a good actress, and she's played a really key role in Game of Thrones, and she's this fan favorite almost, and I think they wasted her.
And she gets maybe 8 minutes of screen time between 2 films.
Right.
That would be probably my second gripe, was the Phasma just being underutilized yet again.
I'm holding out hope that she maybe did survive my old thing about her, falling through and hitting the ground, waking up, and the ship's falling apart, and she gets on a pod and leaves. I mean, because you think about it, that ship in itself is massive, right?
And she was able to survive, Star Killer Base falling apart, and which they went into in the comic, how she got away when that was all going down too. So You never know.
And not to jump around too much, but part of me kind of thought that now that Snoke is gone, and Kylo Ren had done what he did, Kylo Ren's now he's the Supreme Leader, and that great scene where Hux is standing over him when he's passed out and he's reaching for his blaster, and he wants to kill him, and right when he starts to wake up, he puts it back.
I know people that actually didn't catch that on the first viewing. Yeah. The second time they saw it, they were like, "Oh man, he was going to totally off him."
Because again, that is exactly what he would have done in the Phasma book. When you get to know his character, I mean, that is totally General Hux. He will see opportunity and he will take it. But now that Kylo Ren's the Supreme Leader and he's running the show, it's really cool because you're seeing a scenario where in the original trilogy, and they're playing this parallel between Ben Solo's hero's journey and Anakin Skywalker's hero's journey, which I guess I'm calling it that, but it's more of a hero to villain journey. But where they start out as Jedi, and one obviously becomes a war hero in Anakin, and Ben doesn't really get that far, but they both turn to the dark side, and then they both join this totalitarian order that's trying to basically run the galaxy, and they both play the same role. They're both subservient to a master throughout the entire trilogy. Vader was. I mean, the Emperor was there, and the moment that he steps up and does something about it and saves Luke, he dies. Mm-hmm. So you never get to see what would Vader have done if he was the Emperor. If he ran the galaxy, how would he go and handle that? I mean, he obviously expressed interest in doing that with Luke and Empire, but you never get to see it.
Right.
Now with Kylo Ren, he is the Supreme Leader. And that's, I think, the coolest part about him taking Snoke out is now you get to see what essentially Vader might have done, right? But we get to see it through the eyes of Ben Solo. But he's going to go through, and I think with his emotional instability, he's just going to run rampant across the galaxy.
Yeah, I think so too.
And coming full circle back to Phasma, I was kind of hoping that, okay, so, Snoke's dead, Kylo Ren's running the show, who's going to be his foot soldier to lead his armies and just destroy and lay waste to anyone who opposes him? I thought that'd be Phasma, because that is her character in that book. She's the type of person who will just go in and take anything out that gets in her way. But they didn't play that up, so I don't know. I don't think we're going to get to see it, but for me, that's a part that they missed an opportunity on for sure.
Yeah, it kind of seems like they set it up for Hux to kind of be in that role, taking over and being that person to Kylo Ren. He's kind of his right-hand man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's his right-hand man in the
strategic sense. Yeah, he's not an enforcer type of character like Phasma could have been for him.
Right, and if you think of the foreshadowing too of Hux basically wanting to kill Kylo Ren, that leads into some really cool possibilities for Episode 9. With that, in that relationship already that General Hux would be much happier with Kylo Ren out of the picture. So how loyal is he really going to be to his new Supreme Leader? A guy that he has bickered with and fought with on multiple occasions on screen that he doesn't get along with.
Yeah.
So how's that relationship going to work? So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, me too. Other than that stuff, the only minor gripe I had, it's super, super minor, but it was just the pose that Leia struck when she did her Force thing. It reminded me like of Hocus Pocus or one of those movies, like the way she posed.
She looked like a Sanderson sister flying on her broom. You're totally right, actually. That's kind of funny.
That was a very minor one that bothered me.
Part of me kind of imagined that they were in the storyboard phase, and they had like 20 different drawings of Leia and how she would be posed in that scenario, and all of them probably looked ridiculous, and so they just picked the least ridiculous one, even though it's very Superman-esque. But if you think about it from the vacuum of space and things like that, it wouldn't take much for her to pull herself back to the ship, right? I mean, just a minor tug would have given her the velocity she needed to get back there. I think they tried to play it off where she's sort of, they show her with her hands not necessarily stretched out, but they were kind of bent a bit, as in that was her reaction to being blown out, and it just kind of looked like she was doing a Superman pose. But I don't know. To me, I was so, in that moment, I was so almost terrified I was going to watch Leia die there, because I thought, okay, this is the moment that they can end her character with Carrie Fisher being gone. They have a chance to give her ride into the sunset and have this moment where Ben is now, he doesn't kill his mom. He chooses to lay off the trigger, and these two stupid soldiers, these pilots on either side of him, blow her up.
Yeah.
And now, maybe he's going to be mad at the First Order for taking out his mom. And we talked about that maybe being his reason for betraying Snoke before the movie came out. And they didn't do it, And I remember in the theater, I don't know if you noticed this, it happened both times I watched it. As soon as they show that scene where it's focusing in on her face and Kylo Ren's got his hand on the trigger, it was stone silent in the theater. No one was even chewing popcorn.
Yeah.
Nothing. Everyone was silent, because I think everyone was sort of waiting for that to happen. They were expecting it. And then, you see the torpedoes come out, and they're going towards the ship, and everyone was still quiet, and then it happens, and then they just cut to a different scene.
Yeah, they cut away for like a minute.
Yeah, they cut away, and you're like, wait, really? Leia just died, and now you're just going to go ahead and cut to a different scene? Like, that's insane. But then you see her come back, and then that, to me, was like, I have no idea what to expect now. That was your out. That was your out to let her character die, and they didn't do it. So I think that was a moment for me watching this film where I didn't know what to expect anymore, and I wasn't. I don't know. It was a really almost unsettling moment, but in a good way, where I was like, I have no idea what to expect going from here on out.
Yeah, I felt like they definitely. It was way more of a Leia-centric film than I had anticipated.
Yeah.
I didn't expect them to utilize her character as much and have her be in it as much as she was. So I think they really, paid tribute to her in that way.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to know if that was their original intention or if that was something after the fact. I'm guessing it was probably after.
They used everything they had with her just because it was the last time. Yeah, from what I understand, the Force Awakens was set up to be Han's film, and then The Last Jedi was set up to be Luke's film, and then the third movie was supposed to be Leia's film, where she was going to be the central character. And now knowing that Luke becomes one with the Force at the end of this movie, that made total sense. That Leia is like the last surviving member of the original three. Well, 4 counting Chewie, but she's kind of the last one, and so she was going to play a big part. I'm assuming in leading the Resistance, but they weren't able to go down that route. So I don't know. We'll never know what they had intended, but I'm right there with you. I think that they did a good job of using her character to the most of the effect that she could have had in the film. I think they did a really good job there.
Yeah, they did. It was a satisfying thing to see, and I thought it worked well in paying tribute to her, and a great way to honor her, honor the princess, and she probably easily the most screen time I think she's had in any of the
films. I think so. Yeah.
So
one negative point too, since we're kind of still in the negatives, was it's more of a question. How did you feel about Snoke and his character and how he ended? I don't know if I've asked you this yet.
I thought it was a little anticlimactic.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've, and I don't know how much of that is our speculation,
right?
But like even they've been building him up to be like, even Andy Serkis said he's more powerful than Vader and the Emperor combined.
Right.
He said in an interview, and then they showed that he was incredibly powerful.
Right.
I mean, he was just toying with Rey.
Oh, totally. I mean,
and barely lifting a finger and sending her flying around the room and redirecting the saber and doing all these things. So, I thought it was a interesting use of the character, and it kind of, I think he's dead.
I agree.
There's people, I think, setting themselves up to be disappointed in the next one when they're hoping that he's not actually dead,
right?
And all these things. But I thought he served the purpose well of setting it up for Kylo to be the big baddie in the upcoming films.
Yeah.
Like you said, he is now like, let's see what Vader would have done if he was the head honcho.
Yeah.
And so, initially it bugged me that they took him out so easily, but after I saw it the second time and I started thinking about it more, I'm like, well, this is pretty cool.
Yeah. And
And would I like to know more about him? Yeah, I'd like to know more about him, but I think that'll come out in books and comics.
Right.
And
well, I think we did talk about this at one point, but a lot of people's anger about, well, who was he? We built him up in the first movie, and then you come in here 3/4 of the way through and you kill the guy. We don't know where he came from. We don't know what his race or origin is. We don't know what his motivations were or any of that stuff.
If you really think about it, though, it was us, the fans, that built him up.
Totally.
Because he was he was barely in the first movie.
Yes.
Like, as a hologram.
Right.
Like, we're the ones that speculated and came up with all these theories and thought he was like, he's got to be somebody. He's got to be Mace Windu.
It has to be, yeah. Right. Well, I think the key there is he's not missing a hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. The Mace Windu theory kind of made me laugh a little bit because you very clearly see that he has two organic hands.
Okay, he's Tarkin then.
Usually the pieces of Tarkin brought back together.
Yes.
But, I think you're totally right. But it has to be said, though, that Disney did kind of do a really good job of feeding into the theories. So they were kind of leading people on by a string a little bit there. I think knowing full well that they were gonna disappoint some people. And I mean, it's free marketing. Why not? But I will have to admit that during the film, when Kylo Ren cut Snoke in half, and I did kind of go, really? That's it? You're done with him?
Yeah.
But I think the more I sat and thought about it, and after hearing some of the complaints online about his character, I started thinking back to the original trilogy, and I always tend to do that with films, and I think that's what got a lot of us in trouble with the prequels, was we were always comparing it to the original trilogy.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to think back, who's this character trying to mimic? Okay, he's obviously mimicking the Emperor, right? That's who Snoke's character is essentially in this film. So let's go back and think about the Emperor. Let's wipe all knowledge of the prequels out of my head, and let's take everything we know about him in the expanded universe and everything from the novels.
Yeah, we saw him as a hologram.
You heard about
briefly.
him. You heard about him in A New Hope. He was mentioned. The Emperor has wiped away the Imperial Senate. He was mentioned in A New Hope. You saw him for less than 2 minutes in Empire. Right, so you see the hologram with the creepy eyes in the unedited version.
Yep.
That wasn't Ian McDiarmid, right? And which was far more terrifying than what he looked like in Return of the Jedi. And then in Return of the Jedi, you finally see the guy, and all he does is he walks out of his ship and he sits on a throne, and then at the very end of the movie, he stands up and shocks Luke Skywalker. That is all you know about him, right? From the whole original trilogy, you only know those things. What people are forgetting is they're complaining that they wanted to know Snoke's backstory. That was the prequels, and you hated them, right? So if you're complaining that you don't know about Snoke, if you get Snoke's backstory, you may end up with Phantom Menace Part 2.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I know that's not the reason that movie was terrible, but the big vehicle for the prequels was learning about Emperor Palpatine and how he rose to power. That was kind of part of that, and Vader's journey with it. But, we didn't know anything about Palpatine's past or history, save what was in the Legends continuity, beyond what we saw in those 3 films. And we learned all that in 1999, not in 1983. Mm-hmm. So it took a long time to get there. And Snoke they're doing the same thing. They just did it in the second movie instead of the third one. And in fact, I would argue that when you first see Snoke in Force Awakens, he has more screen time than Palpatine does in Empire, obviously, and probably has just about the same amount in The Last Jedi as he did in Return of the Jedi. So, I don't really understand people's arguments there. It just doesn't make sense to me because it is exactly what you got with Palpatine. Yep. People loved him.
Yep. No, I definitely feel the same way, and I definitely had a different perspective on it after seeing it the second time and having more time to digest and think about it. So now let's go into what we loved or liked about the movie.
Well, the funny thing is, we've talked about this entire film, and we haven't really mentioned much about Rey at all.
Exactly.
I thought Daisy Ridley was great. I thought the cast was great. Mark Hamill was great. Pretty much, I think the acting all the way through, and honestly, even Carrie Fisher, who I thought was a little dry in Force Awakens, she really pulled it together in this movie. And,
she was a lot better. A lot better this time around.
Unfortunately, we lost her, but she was great in this movie too. I loved seeing some of the old characters come back. Like, you got Nine Numb in there again, Akbar. Rest in peace. Which, if I could real quick, people complain about Akbar dying without much more than a mention. That's war, right? I think that's what they were trying to get across, is like, even legends like that, a guy like Akbar, who everyone loves, can just get offed like that, just by a torpedo hitting hitting a deck. Like, it's just, that's the way it works. And he got a little send off where they had to say all of our leadership is gone, which is where Holdo comes in. I think Laura Dern did a pretty good job. If you want to know more about Vice Admiral Holdo, read the Leia Princess of Alderaan book. Yeah,
I heard she's really a great character in that.
They build her character up a lot. You learn where she met Leia. You also learn a lot about Crate. So you learn about that planet because it's in that book as well. And that book takes place before A New Hope. So there's a lot of history built up there. But you learn a lot more about her character. And because part of me was like, man, why didn't they just use Admiral Akbar for one of my favorite scenes in the movie, which was Holdo going hyperspace.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Right into, playing a game of chicken with a bunch of First Order ships and totally winning. I thought, why couldn't you do Akbar there, man? Like, because you might have been the one that said this, but it was literally a trap, right?
Yes.
I mean, you could have Admiral Akbar, setting up the trap for the First Order and just running right through them.
Yeah.
That would have been some fan service for sure. But when you stop and think about it, there's no way Poe would have gone against Admiral Akbar at all. If Akbar had said get in those transports and get to Crate, he would have been like, sweet, let's go. And he would have jumped in and not even thought about it. They needed to build up that tension of, you don't know, who this character is, and you don't know what her allegiances are. Which, if you read Leia, Princess of Alderaan, you know her allegiances, and I never questioned it through the movie.
Yeah, but for your average person who didn't know that going in, they had to be it had to be believable that maybe she's making the wrong decision.
Yeah,
and the whole Poe going against her thing had more weight to it, not knowing that stuff.
Right, and so imagine put Akbar in her character's spot, and you wouldn't have had that conflict at all. And the whole point of that was, it was Poe trying to take the lead and be the leader, and having to learn lessons still. Twice in one movie he had to learn lessons about leadership there, which was, Leia put Holdo in charge, and he needed to trust her. He needed to trust Leia and her, her authority on that one. He tried to do what he thought was right, and it turns out it was somewhat wrong. But man, the way they animated that hyperspace shot through the ship was it was great.
Yeah. Then it went completely silent. And then they had the explosion noises.
Yeah,
a little bit afterwards. That was something really I don't think we've ever seen done like that before.
No, and honestly, it wouldn't have been something I would have even thought of doing. And I thought that was a really nice surprise in the movie. And her doing that sets up basically to me, like, seeing her hit hyperspace and take out the supremacy was sort of the beginning of the last part of the film, where the film starts to, Snoke gets cut in half, she runs straight through the ship. Now everything's going to start, all the rocks are tumbling over the cliff, like everything's going to start falling into place. So that I thought was one of my favorite parts of the movie. I actually like the Porgs. I don't know about you. I know a lot of people hate them.
I liked them. I liked the Porgs. But I thought I was going to be annoyed by the Porgs, but I actually really liked them.
And for anybody who is annoyed by the Porgs, keep in mind, the reason that they put them in the movie was not to do with marketing at all. I actually believe them on this one. Rian Johnson had said the whole reason they were even in the film was because Skellig Michael, the island they filmed the Octo on, is full of puffins. They're everywhere.
Yep.
And they would have had to go through and pick out every single one digitally after the fact and remove them from the film. And so they couldn't just have Earth puffins flying around on the planet.
Yeah, exactly.
So they had to do something with them. So they decided to tweak them a little bit and make them Porgs. So there are some, establishing shots where they show birds flying, and those are just the puffins. They didn't have to do anything with them.
Yeah.
Because through the magic of film, you assume they're Porgs, right? even though I'm sure if you look closely, you can tell that they're not.
Yeah, and they put in the little noises and everything when they were flying around.
Right. And so it would have been a lot of work to go in and just, sort of, for lack of a better term, Photoshop them out of the scenes, the more close-up scenes, so they just changed them to porgs. So where you see some porgs in the background where they're walking around in Octo, they're actually just puffins that are hanging out there. And they apparently really enjoyed the puffins while they were on the island, and the cast and the crew loved them, so they wanted to sort of put them in the movie. So
No, I thought it worked great. And I love Chewie's interaction with how Chewie gets introduced to the porgs.
So you know this, your nieces love the porgs, right? My daughters. And I don't know how I'm gonna show them that scene where Chewie is eating a porg, right? I mean, at some point they're gonna watch this movie and be devastated.
Chewie, he had some chicken with him.
Yeah,
he cooked some chickens,
and it looks like a porg.
So they were disturbed.
The porgs think he's eating them, but he's really just eating a chicken.
I think he should have taken a bite.
Yeah, but that shows that Chewie has some heart, right?
No, I liked it. I thought they did it the right way.
Yeah, so the porgs I thought were great. Having read the Leia book, I like seeing Crate. I thought that was kind of cool, seeing an old Rebel base and stuff.
Speaking of which, the Crate Star Wars comic featuring an adventure that Luke and Leia had on Crate in the past.
I haven't read that.
That just came out yesterday.
Cool.
So I just got it, and I'm ready to read that. So
should have read it before we did.
I know. It's supposed to give some backstory on, that being an old Rebel base there and everything.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't want to give too much away about the Leia book because, again, I highly recommend people who have some time to just throw on an audiobook. Give them a listen, give it a shot. They're actually pretty entertaining. I find it work. I work a desk job.
Yeah.
So it helps me focus. I get my spreadsheet stuff done.
Yeah, and I listen to mine when I'm driving, commuting. It's perfect way to pass. And the neat thing about the Star Wars audiobooks is, at least the ones I have, they have the sound effects and different things.
Sound effects, John Williams music, all of it. And
it's awesome.
It helps bring it all together for sure. And one little disclaimer there. So keep in mind, anything that is a novel from Star Wars 2012 and back is not considered part of canon. Anything you read from 2012 on actually fits in with the what they call the canon's continuity, or canon continuity. So you're gonna get tie-ins to the old movies. You're going to get tie-ins to the new trilogy, all that stuff.
And for people that don't know what canon means, canon basically means it exists in the same universe as the movies. It's stuff that actually took place and happened in that universe.
Right.
Non-canon means that it's someone else's, almost like a fan fiction version, that didn't take place in the world that we're seeing on the big screen.
Right. And sort of a mainstream way of thinking of it is how all the Marvel movies like Doctor Strange and Ant-Man all fit in with Iron Man and Thor and all that. They all fit together. It's kind of the same concept. It's just doing it through different mediums.
Yeah, they call it the Marvel thematic universe.
Right. And so they have a story group just like they do with Marvel. Kevin Feige, I think that's how you say his name, is kind of the guy in charge. They have a group of people that actually make sure all these things fit and connect so they don't contradict each other very much. There's maybe, out of all the books that I've listened to, there's only a couple of things that I were like, okay, that doesn't really fit. But I mean, if you think about the pages and pages of text that they've written on these.
Yeah, and trying to keep continuity.
Yeah, they've done a great job. And they do a great job of helping to sort of expand and build on these characters. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth reading or listening to for sure. But again, things I liked about the movie. I thought Poe's character was great. Oscar Isaac did a good job. I didn't have a problem with Luke dying.
No.
Now that they've done it, now that I've come to accept it, I think the way he went out with just toying with Kylo Ren and, kind of getting back at him for what he had done, and I don't have a problem either with the way that Kylo Ren turned and people saying that, well, Luke Skywalker would never try to kill somebody.
Yeah, but he had already turned. Like Luke said, Snoke had already. I looked inside and I saw that Snoke had already turned his heart.
Right.
So he was already gone at that point, and Luke realized it. And even then, he felt conflicted and decided not to kill him.
Yes. And when you think about it, I mean, because they're like, well, Luke, he saved his father. Vader did all these horrible things and things way worse than Kylo Ren would have done. Luke lived the terror and the horror of the Empire. He helped fight against it. He knows what could happen if Ben were to turn and another Skywalker went bad. He gets that. And I think even a Jedi is flawed in that regard. I mean, the original Jedi Order was flawed. That's why things went south, because they were arrogant, and Luke says as much in the film, which the callback to Sidious and not calling him Palpatine.
Yeah.
Love that they were
that was great.
Putting a little prequel in there.
We're talking about the hubris of the Jedi and all of that.
And directly referencing Darth Sidious. But so of course Luke is going to want to stop it before it becomes a problem, right? I mean, had Obi-Wan just gone through and finished the job with Vader, you wouldn't have half the problems you do. I mean, Palpatine would have still been there, but he would have had to find somebody else to do his dirty work, right? But
Luke had very much witnessed firsthand how it could go.
Yeah.
If somebody like that,
and even with the most noble of intentions, he's still going to have a moment of weakness there. And so I don't have a problem with him at all trying to do the right thing, or what he thought was the right thing at the time, and then not being able to go through with it.
And again, another twist on the character that nobody anticipated. Our beloved Luke Skywalker is thinking about this kid.
Well, I think people forget that he was just a bratty farm kid on Tatooine who wanted to go pick up power converters. He was a whiny little brat through almost all of A New Hope and part of Empire, and you start to see him come around in Return of the Jedi. But
yeah, it's funny too. I saw something where somebody hated The Last Jedi because the acting was horrible.
I don't buy that.
And I wanted to say, go back and watch the originals.
Yeah.
The acting is not that great in the originals.
There's a famous letter that Alec Guinness had written to a friend while filming A New Hope, about how ridiculous the dialogue was, and how he hated the fact that he took the job and didn't want to do it, and thought it was going to ruin his career and all this stuff. The dialogue's pretty bad in the original trilogy. It's, but we love it because it is what it is, and so but I thought the acting was just fine in this one.
I did too. Aside from maybe like Rose or something, but I don't know if that's just because we're seeing a limited look at what she had a chance to be involved with all the stuff that was cut out.
Yeah, I'm curious to see her character in the next movie for sure. I want to see where they take her. I do like how I almost looked at her as she's kind of the audience, right? She's this relative nobody, just some random soldier in the Resistance who's now being taken on the main journey, right? She's being whisked away by this hero of the Resistance and being pulled into a bigger fight. She's basically a foot soldier who's getting the grand treatment. So that was kind of cool. It sort of takes the everyman approach to a character in the films, and so it gives her a bit more of a grounded aspect to her. Knowing it was Kelly Marie Tran's first big film, she's done bit parts. I thought she did pretty good. I mean,
considering that, she did great.
Yeah, I won't want to knock on her too much, but yeah, I mean, then again, I thought Daisy Ridley was a little dry in the beginning of Force Awakens. You can see her acting get better as they filmed more of the movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, she got better as the film progressed. So, I'm going to give these people a pass because I'm not an actor. I can't do their job.
Yeah.
So who am I to judge them for that, right?
Which is important for the 99.8% of people watching it. Right. That need to keep that in mind, that you could not do what these people do at all.
Nope. Not going to try. It would be pretty bad.
I loved what they did with Luke. I'll be honest, when he walked out in front of all those walkers, I was thinking we were going to see some Legends of Luke Skywalker stuff, and
he's going to take all the walkers and smash them into a ball.
Yeah, they were going to fall down, and
that would have been awesome.
I thought that's what we were going to see, and then they start shooting at him, and he walks out and does the little brush the dirt off his shoulder thing.
Which, okay, real quick to interrupt you, a lot of people are giving a lot of grief on that, and they're saying that, that's such a lame thing for him to do, the little brushing off the shoulder thing. Some people said it took them out of the movie because it didn't seem a very Star Wars thing to do. That was a callback to, I believe, old Japanese cinema. And why am I now blanking on the director's name?
Kurosawa.
Thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
it was a callback to Kurosawa. So, in which, if you know, Star Wars is heavily ripping off
influenced
Kurosawa. I mean, that George Lucas admitted to it.
Yep.
You know, so that's what that is. That's a callback to Akira Kurosawa and all the things that he had done in some of his films. And so I let that one slide.
Yeah, no, I like that. I thought it was very much they gave Luke some very Mark Hamill moments, if you know his personality and things. When he winked at 3PO.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
3PO just kind of got crapped on this whole movie.
Yeah, I thought 3PO and Chewie kind of got the shaft a bit. People didn't really treat him with some respect, so I'm hoping for some droid and working appreciation in Episode 9, but I love that. But again, people are saying like, oh, you know, Luke wouldn't do that. Luke's a farm boy from Tatooine. He's a Jedi, but he wasn't raised in the stoic Jedi Order and all that kind of stuff. He basically lived this traveling life of fighting the Empire in this war and stuff. So he's not gonna be that guy, right? I mean,
no.
If you want that guy, I don't know if you've beat it yet, but play Battlefront 2. You get a little more of that.
I think I'm getting near the end of it. But.
Yeah, you get some of that in his character there. You kind of see that there was a period of time before Ben Solo turned bad and all that stuff happened that he was going that path. He was becoming the stoic Jedi that you would hope him to be. So he did get that part of his life, and I think they're still writing that aspect of it, obviously. But he did get to become that. It's just at the time you see him in The Last Jedi, he's past that, and they tell you that from the very first scene, where he takes the lightsaber and just throws it behind his back and just walks off.
Exactly. That set the tone for the whole movie right there.
They're trying to tell you, and they use many, many points in the movie, and Luke himself is doing it where he says, this is not going to go the way that you think.
Yep. And what Kylo says after, you know, they take out the Praetorian Guards and everything, and he's like, let the Jedi die, let the Sith die, the First Order. He's all like basically saying, forget all the stuff that you know.
Yep.
This is a new direction we're going.
Well, his mantra in the whole film is, you know, let the past die and kill it if you have to.
So I thought there was a lot of little subtle things,
right?
You know, if you want to read into it, that's like,
and I think that's what they were trying to do.
They're showing us this. Hey, we're doing something different, guys.
Yeah.
But I loved. Now for me, and that's the cool thing about these movies is because it depending on what you do in your life and your different perspectives, it can mean different things for you. The way Luke went out for me was like as a martial artist, like the display of power that took,
right?
And like, you know, we always talk about in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like not even having technique so good you don't even have to like break a sweat type of thing. Like he didn't even need to physically be there
to totally own
the situation. Like it took power, but he's so powerful he didn't even have to physically be there to accomplish his goal. He like, you know, so to me that was really cool. And there was also a line that Yoda said, which we got to talk about the Yoda scene.
I enjoyed it.
That was awesome.
Yoda knew the books were gone. He knew that Rey had got them.
Totally.
And if you didn't notice, that Rey did take the Jedi text.
Yeah, they're in when Finn's getting the blanket to cover Rose, they're in the compartment. But there was something Yoda said, and I wrote it down after I watched it. It said, "We are what they grow beyond. That is the true burden of all masters."
Oh, for sure.
That's like totally something I experience as a jiu-jitsu coach for all these years.
And honestly, I apply that to parenting too. You want your kids to be better than you. You want your kids to always grow past what your knowledge is, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's such a great line too. I noticed that too when I saw the movie. But it's cool that you can apply that to your trade, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing. But
yeah, so that's the Yoda scene for me was awesome.
Yeah, part of me was still kind of hoping, like, as much as people hate the Hayden Christensen Force Ghost, I kind of hoped he was in it. I did want to see Vader, you know, or Anakin and Luke talk. But again, I'm very happy with the Yoda situation. And another gripe people had was the puppet. I liked that they went back to the puppet, and it was a puppet. They didn't do that all digitally.
I wish they would have done the puppet the whole time, because you can see when it's the first shot of him, you can tell it's CG,
And then they
and then when it switches, then you can.
It's
tell
kind of when he
the
goes
puppet.
into when he gets on camera with Mark Hamill.
Yeah, and when he talks about the books not being page turners type of thing, you can tell that's the puppet. But to me, that looks better.
Yeah.
Than the initial
and
CG.
Some people were like, why didn't they just use the original puppet? A lot of people don't know this, but that puppet does not exist anymore. The puppet doesn't, they lost it or it got stolen or something. And even if they did have it, it was made from materials that deteriorate over time.
Yeah.
The only thing left of Jabba the Hutt is the eyes. That's the only thing left of the Jabba the Hutt that used
that
Return of the Jedi.
stuff's not meant to hold up over
Silicone
time.
deteriorates, and so that puppet is no longer in existence. So they couldn't use it. They had to make a new one, and so that they went the route they did, and I was totally fine with it, and I was very happy seeing it, and just seeing him smack Luke, which
first time we've ever seen Force Ghost physically affect something in the real world.
Which that is foreshadowing for when Luke shows up on Crate. Yeah. And the moment with him and Carrie Fisher where Luke and Leia were talking, and he apologizes for Han.
Tells her nobody's ever really gone.
Right.
Which is cool.
And that, to me, going back to what I loved about Luke's sacrifice is that, you can see it in his face when R2 plays the video back of Leia. And, when kind of referencing that back when he found out about Han, because he'd shut himself off from the Force and didn't sense it.
Which that was cool how they answered that. We were wondering, like, okay, why wouldn't he know?
Right.
So now we know he had shut himself off from the Force.
Yep. And I think that the whole showdown on Crate was Luke saying to himself, I couldn't save Han. I'll be damned if I'm let my sister die. He was doing that to save Leia and save the Resistance and start the new rebellion. He had walked away from it all, and one of his best friends died in the process. His brother-in-law died in the process. And I think that that's kind of where his character's mindset is at that point is, enough is enough. He's got to stop. He's got to stop running away from it, and he's got to do something, knowing full well that if he didn't jump in, there's a good chance Leia was going to die, and he wasn't going to let that happen. So he comes in, and they show them, he takes her hand and he kisses her on the forehead and stuff. I love seeing that part. And then just, watching him without even having to use a lightsaber blade. He just totally owns Kylo Ren at that point.
And I'll be honest, like, the twist got me. Like, when we found out he wasn't there, I knew something was off. I was like, okay, his hair's different. His beard's darker. He's got the blue lightsaber. Yeah. But even with all that, I was still buying that he was actually there.
Yeah, I mean, part of me wanted to believe it, but I agree.
And now when you go back, if you look, they made a very intentional emphasis on people's feet disrupting
which
the
is
salt.
Another Akira Kurosawa kickback to getting into the fighting stance.
But when Luke does it in that scene,
no salt.
Nothing moves. So it's like, okay, they're subtle, cues that he's not actually there, but
right. And then the argument too that, like, why didn't Luke have his green saber? Because Kylo Ren was there when that one.
He's going back to his roots.
Yeah, I mean, the lightsaber thing didn't bother me. I think that's more one of those things they're trying to give hints to the audience about that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. That it proves the point that Kylo Ren is so emotionally unstable that he wouldn't even notice it anyway. He was so angry that he had a chance to take out Luke Skywalker. Yeah. It didn't dawn on him that the lightsaber that just exploded in front of him was now in Luke's hands, So, which, speaking of which, one of the things I liked about this now is Rey's got to get a lightsaber.
Yeah.
She's got to go and
build. She's got to build. She's either got to repair that one or build another one.
Yeah.
Because they show her holding the two pieces at the end.
And another thing, too, is, again, speculation. We should know better by now that we can't do this. But the crystal was cracked. So she's probably going to have to find her own or have an unstable blade like Kylo Ren's. Which might be a little too much. I don't think they should go that route. But I don't know about you, but I'd love to see a saber staff. I'd love to see her with a double-sided saber staff, especially, when they've shown over, even in The Force Awakens and this movie, how good she is with the staff. Well, and I think they kind of alluded to it in this film as well, because if you think about it, the scene where she's sort of training by herself and Luke walks up behind her and is watching her and she cuts that rock with the saber. When she's using her staff, she's precise. She stops just before she hits the rock.
Yeah.
And her fighting style is almost identical with the staff. It's the same way as it is with the lightsaber. So I think they're kind of letting you know that, yeah, that is what she's comfortable with, because when she tries to use the lightsaber, she slices straight through the rock.
She's a little unruly and out of control with it.
With her staff, she is pinpoint accurate. So again, speculating, and because I want it to happen probably means they're not going to do it. But man, that would be cool to see her with a saber staff, made out of the parts from her staff that she had in Jakku.
Totally.
Would be pretty cool, because the Return of the Jedi lightsaber is supposed to be found parts on Tatooine. That's where Luke put it together.
Right.
And there's a deleted scene showing him, putting it together in a cave on Tatooine. So, it would make sense for her to be able to use some of the pieces that she's, because her staff is supposed to be parts of ships and junk that she's collected that she's made into a staff.
Right.
So it's not one piece, right? So it's very realistic that she could turn it around and make it into a lightsaber. So I hope we see that.
Maybe she can use the 2 pieces of the crystal, one on each side.
Oh, maybe.
If it's a dual-bladed saber.
Yeah, could work. Could work. I don't know. I mean, but again, it's like that's something I definitely want to see. So I don't know.
So it won't happen.
It won't happen. It won't happen, Ryan Johnson. But he's not involved. JJ's a little more...
JJ's listening to this, and he's going to be like, no, those
JJ
guys want to see that.
Is a little more, I think, kind of what the fans want, and hopefully he'll do something with that. So...
you know what? People are going to gripe no matter who's doing it if they don't get to see what they want to see. So
right. Well, I mean,
we'll enjoy it because
we complain about George Lucas, and he's the one that started it all.
Exactly.
So, and that's just what we get to do as
fans.
Which
they threw a few little George Lucas moments in. I think he has a clause in there where he gets to have at least a couple minutes of footage in each movie.
Couple of cheesy things.
Yeah.
Like he really likes horse racing.
I think the horse racing.
So
I think the little whatchamacallit, troll.
Yeah.
Troll guy putting the coins in BB-8. I think that was his doing.
Voiced by Mark Hamill, by the way.
Yeah. Which actually I thought was funny.
Yeah, I didn't actually catch it first because when I first saw it, I was like, why is that guy sticking coins in BB-8?
Yeah.
And then I didn't realize the slot machine looks like a BB unit. So that the second time I saw it, I caught that part. But I mean, that's like kind of the amazing thing about this movie is we've seen it twice. There's still things we've missed. We've been talking about this for almost a couple hours now. And there's still things we haven't discussed.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's so much involved in The Last Jedi that it's going to take a long time to, I think, really appreciate it. And going back to it as well, people loved The Phantom Menace when it came out. It was highly rated the first few weeks it came out. It wasn't until it sunk into people that it just didn't feel right. People were stoked about it at first.
Yeah, because we'd all been waiting for so long for another Star Wars movie.
I saw that movie 4 or 5 times in the theater, and it wasn't until later that I was like, well, really, it isn't that great of a movie.
That was one of the few movies I've gone to in recent times. I mean, it was years ago, but, a newer movie where, like, the line was literally wrapped all the way around the outside of the building, and I had to wait, in this huge line to get in, and everybody was in costumes, and I even wore my Luke from Return of the Jedi shirt.
Yeah, exactly. I mean everyone was decked out and stuff.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Everyone gets all excited about it, and then it comes out, and everyone loves it, apparently. I mean, there are people on film saying, in news reports, you can still find online of it's the best Star Wars movie they've ever seen. It's better than the originals. And, now no one thinks that.
Yeah.
And then you think back to when Return of the Jedi came out, Empire, what's widely believed by many people as the best of the series, myself included, that hated it. Critics hated it. They couldn't stand the fact that it didn't have a resolution at the end. That it was unheard of that the hero's father is the villain. Like,
if you go on, I believe it's comicbook.com right now, they have an article where it actually is a magazine that people were writing into and talking about Empire. And it sounds just like people that are talking about The Last Jedi right now.
And how angry they were that they changed all these things. And so I believe that through the test of time, people will warm up to The Last Jedi, and I think especially too when you go back and you see Episode 9, go back, but when you go forward and see Episode 9, I hope it wraps things up in a way that makes Episode 8 more palatable. I think that people, when they see The Last Jedi, they have a bitter taste in their mouth because there's so many things happen, so many characters that you love die, and characters end. So
I have faith that JJ will do it right.
Yeah, me too.
A lot of people don't realize about JJ when they talk about him. I mean, that dude almost turned down doing the Star Trek movie because he is such a huge Star Wars fan. He thought he would be betraying Star Wars if he did a Star Trek movie.
Right.
He literally almost turned that down.
Right.
So I mean, he cares enough that he's gonna try to do it right.
Right. So I think he's gonna do a good job too, and it's good having somebody who's already been established in this trilogy, going back to it. I think one of the complaints that may be a bit valid is that it does seem to feel a bit like two directors at war with each other in a way, where like JJ sets up all these threads for someone to follow, and then Rian Johnson goes in and kills most of it off.
Yeah.
Which, keep in mind too, Rian Johnson wrote this film when he was done with the script, the initial draft, when The Force Awakens was released. So hence the dice, Han's dice, were supposed to be in The Force Awakens. There was supposed to be a scene where it's where Han first goes to the cockpit of the Falcon, and he's supposed to hang the dice back up. And that's why you're supposed to know in The Last Jedi what the dice are and where they come from.
Yeah, because other than that, you briefly see them hanging there
if you
look really close in A New Hope.
Yep, and they weren't in Empire and they weren't in Return of the Jedi. They were in one scene in A New Hope, and it was, JJ kind of taking a call back to that scene and putting the dice there. But I think it still serves itself well. I think even the most casual fan gets in the Last Jedi that those are Han's dice, right? Which is
especially when he gives them to Leia at the end,
right?
You clearly know.
Yes, and the dice are a construct of Luke. It's something.
Yep.
Because I think you're supposed
they disappear after Kylo picks them up,
right? And I think you're supposed to view that scene as the dice disappearing, Rey and Leia having that Force sense that Luke's gone, is all happening kind of at the same time. So it's not like the dice are a remnant or anything like that, but I think it all sort of happens all at once. So and those dice are apparently supposed to play a big part in Solo.
I would hope.
So the new Solo movie.
So I think they can expand on that a little bit, and it'll make even more sense.
Those are supposed to be the dice that where Han won the Falcon from Lando.
So let's go into, because we could easily spend way too much time.
Days, weeks, years.
We'll have to do this again, because obviously it's not going to be enough time on one podcast. But Episode 9 speculation. Where do you think we're going with Episode 9? Let's put an easy one out there. Do you think we're going to see Luke as a Force ghost in Episode 9?
Unless Mark Hamill is actually angry about it, I think, because there's a lot of speculation that he's angry about Luke.
Did you see his thing he posted a couple days ago, apologizing?
About his opinions on it?
He said that he was wrong.
Yeah, I mean...
he said all that beforehand, and...
part of me thinks it may be a little bit of
playing
Disney kind of going, hey man, cut us a break here. And he's entitled to his opinion too. And I agree with him. Like he wants the best for Luke. He wants happiness for Luke, like we all did. And we didn't necessarily get that. So he's entitled to that reaction, absolutely. And he's also, like you said, entitled to changing his mind on that too.
Right.
There's a 12 steps, that you have to kind of go through to accept it. But having said that, I do think that he is going to be in the next film. I mean, his last line to Kylo Ren was "See you around, kid."
Yeah.
I mean,
which I also thought, and I don't know if anybody else picked up on it or read into it like I did, but that's a total Han.
Oh yeah.
Line.
Yeah. Telling him his dad's always going to be with him, and then using a Han Solo line at him, and so again, what I think we're going to see in Episode 9. I think we're definitely going to see Luke as a Force ghost, because if you think about it, that's what all these movies have been missing up until, from the prequels all the way to The Last Jedi. We haven't seen a Force ghost.
Yep.
They just, they were original trilogy only up to this point, and we finally see one with Yoda again. I think we're going to see the Force Ghost, but I don't just think that the Force Ghost is going to be, I don't think Luke's just going to be visiting Rey. I think he's going to torment Kylo Ren.
Yeah,
he's
I
going to
think so,
show
too.
up, and he's going to nitpick at Kylo Ren a little bit. I think that he's going to try to steer him in certain directions.
He's going to be a haunting,
Yes.
type of presence for Kylo.
Yep, and I think that that's leading into that.
Because he tells him, I'm going to be around just like your dad if you cut me down
Yep.
in anger.
Yep, I'm gonna be there with you. So I think that that's where they're going with that. I do think that he's gonna visit Rey, I hope, and I mean, part of me, fan service wise, I would love to see. I don't have a problem seeing Ewan McGregor as the Force Ghost of Obi-Wan. I mean, you could do a little scene where he shows up looking like Alec Guinness, makes some joke about looking old, and then kind of turning into Ewan McGregor. Because frankly, I loved him in the prequel.
Oh,
I think
he was great.
Great job, as Obi-Wan. So I think you could do something there. I want to see a time skip. I think one of the things that I had a hard time getting through with The Last Jedi was the fact that it takes place days after The Force Awakens. To me, that was harder than almost anything, I think, to grasp with this new movie, was just that there was none of that mystery of what happened between the films, and so that doesn't exist in this movie. So it's a scenario where I hope we get a good 3 or 4 years. I want to believe that Rey's become a lot more powerful. I think that the First Order should be established as a tyrannical
I want to
force in the
see
galaxy.
I want to see what Kylo's been established as the
Right.
supreme leader, and
man,
here's
get a
all the
helmet.
stuff that he's done.
Get a helmet.
Please get a helmet.
Get a mask or something. I mean, I don't have a problem with Adam Driver. I think he's done a great job with the character, but when I saw them cast a named and known actor as Kylo Ren, even in The Force Awakens, I was like, they're going to take his damn helmet off.
Yeah.
He's the bad guy, right? As soon as they said he was the bad guy, I'm like, they're going to take his helmet off. Because you got to show the actor. They do it in every movie where a character wears a mask. They do it in Spider-Man. They do it in Iron Man. All of these films where the character wears a mask, their mask always comes off.
With the exception of Phasma.
Rest in peace. Yeah. But they always do that. They have to show the drama in the actor's face, but I don't think you need that. I just don't. And I get that they're going to have to do it in episode 9. You're going to want to see his face at some point, but I definitely want to see him with another helmet or mask of some kind, or give him a hood, something.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with his character design and the hair even, but he needs to seem more menacing. He just seems like a depressed college kid.
Seems like a angry emo kid.
Yeah, and I hate using that term and stuff, but
I know.
I mean, it really just feels like that. Like he's just some bratty kid, and maybe that's what they're trying to do, but I need to see some physical evil in him.
Yeah, we want to see him more developed and kind of more established as this,
right?
The new supreme leader.
Yeah, and I know that Adam Driver's 34, 35 years old, but he looks very young in these movies, and I don't know if they're trying to terrify parents by like, your teenage kid can grow up and destroy the galaxy. So that's the fear they're trying to get into about it. But he needs to seem more menacing. He needs to, because if he's going to be the supreme leader and he's going to be the guy that's just running rampant across the galaxy and totally the new emo Hitler or whatever, it's like you gotta feel like that guy's dangerous, and I know they think they've established that, but it's like he doesn't seem or look dangerous, and I think that's important.
Mainly shown us that he's like a brat that throws big tantrums, and it's dangerous because of how powerful he is, but they haven't really shown or established him as this kind of a character that can lead and do all this stuff.
Frankly, I don't think he's going to be a very good leader, and I think that's going to be what they're going to play off with Hux. Like, Hux is probably going to have better ideas, but Kylo Ren's going to basically force choke him and say, no, throw everything you got at this place and keep screwing up. And I think, if anything, you might see him having to go in and mop up his own messes a little bit, and building off of his instability. And I think that is what makes him so dangerous, is that now, because like with Snoke, just like with Palpatine, you had this figurehead who is old and wise and a chess player. This guy's dangerous because he's always one step ahead of you. Kylo Ren's not one step ahead of you. He's just going to cut your head off.
Yep.
Right? So it's like, that's where I think we're going to see some of that going on in episode 9.
We saw that with Lor Santeca at the beginning of Force Awakens, where he chops him down.
Right. And you have to know, Lor Santeca probably knew where Luke was. If Kylo Ren had thought a little bit harder about it, he would have taken him prisoner and tried to figure out through him where Luke was.
But he got that little dig into him about his family, and he chopped
You make fun
him
of
down.
my family, and you make fun of me and where I came from, and I'm just going to cut you in half.
Yeah.
So I think they've built that up enough that that's going to be what's going to make him so scary. Also, I would like to see the Knights of Ren. I think that now, having said all my complaints about Phasma and her character, I think why they might have killed her off, if they're going this route of Kylo Ren being the new Supreme Leader, he's going to need foot soldiers. He's going to need some people to go through and lead his armies, right?
He's got to have those enforcer
Who better than the Knights of Ren at this point, right? So if you time jump a few years, now you've got the Knights of Ren, the students from the Jedi Temple that Luke talked about that Kylo Ren took with him. I don't think they're the Praetorian Guard, who were awesome, by the way.
No, I don't think they were.
Yeah, I like the Praetorian Guard, but those guys were Snoke's, his royal guard, essentially.
Version, yeah.
So one of them got a lightsaber through the eye. I don't think Kylo Ren would have done that to his Knights of Ren. So what I want to see is the Knights of Ren should be housed on Vader's castle on Mustafar.
Yeah.
I want that callback to Rogue One. I thought it was a fantastic film. They did call back to it in The Last Jedi. Hyperspace tracking is one of the secret programs that Jyn finds in the records database on Scarif.
Oh, okay.
So when she's going through naming off all these programs.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
She talks about hyperspace tracking, which is exactly what they were doing to the Resistance in this film.
Gotcha.
I would love to see them explore Vader's castle. I mean, they showed it to you in Rogue One. They built it up as an established place. You know it exists.
And a lot of people, if they have the Art of book, now know that the rock in Snoke's ring is obsidian from Mustafar. So that was pretty cool.
It's from underneath Vader's castle.
Small callback there.
So I would love to, because that to me would explain. So The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi take place over a couple of weeks, right? If Kylo Ren had his Knights of Ren on Mustafar, you can justify it as the events of these films took place so quickly. There was no time to even call them or have them come or do whatever, right? So there was no need to pull them in. But now that he leads everything, he leads the First Order, that's when you bring those guys into the fold. And I think that's why now he's the master of the Knights of Ren. So he's got his generals essentially to lead his army. Which would also probably make Hux really uncomfortable, right? That he's got all these guys now that are his bros, essentially, that are helping him run the show, and Hux is over here like, hey man, I'm a general, and I should have some say in all this stuff. I think the time jump, the Knights of Ren need to come back, because they just look really cool, and I want to see more about them.
They definitely need to be his guard.
Right. If that's why you got rid of Phasma, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that would be fine. If she's actually gone, which I think she probably is, that would be a good way to kind of cover that area. And have his enforcer type guard characters that are by his side. I think I agree that Luke will be in episode 9. Something I would like to see, and I told you this, I think it'd be cool if they kind of did like a Gandalf type thing where they show what he experiences going to the other side. Obviously not in the form of coming back like Gandalf did as Gandalf the White, but just the whole like what he sees, like when he goes through to the other side, and which would
be really interesting, actually. And did you read From a Certain Point of View?
No, not
so
yet.
That's another book. It's a 40 short stories celebrating the 40th anniversary of A New Hope, and it's 40 stories following 40 different characters, and it all goes into in the timeline of A New Hope. So you start off at the beginning of the film and it works all the way through the end, and it's side stories of random characters and what were they doing, these characters that weren't really a part of that particular scene,
right? And
they go through what Obi-Wan experiences as a Force ghost, what he experiences at the moment Vader cuts him down. There's even one about Qui-Gon, which I loved because I'm a huge Qui-Gon nerd,
right?
Where it's a scene before he goes and saves Luke from the Tusken Raiders, and it talks about how he spoke to Qui-Gon. Or no, sorry, it was after he'd already gotten Luke, when Luke goes back to the the hut,
Right.
to the farm, and finds Owen and Beru, crispy fried, because he runs away from Obi-Wan at that point, and then he comes back. So it's in between that. It's when that happens. But he speaks to Qui-Gon, and it talks about how Qui-Gon has to sort of pull himself away from the Force, and it's a painful experience for him, and he doesn't want to do it because he's basically living a life of bliss now in eternity.
It's not easy to do.
It's not, and
which
it's why
shows
they don't
us,
just hang out all the time,
Which shows us how damned powerful Yoda is now.
Right.
That he
he
can not only do it, but he can be laughing,
do it and smack Luke in the head. Yeah. So yes, I think that's actually a great suggestion. I'd love to see that.
I would like to see that. I'd like to see them play a little bit on the. I felt, and I'm not the only one who's kind of talked about this or sensed this. I felt a little like some kind of romantic tension between Kylo and Rey.
I think they've set up some romantic tension between Rey and Finn, Rey and Kylo, and Rey and Poe even.
Yeah.
Even that last scene where Poe introduces himself to Rey.
Yeah, I caught that too.
Think about what Poe says to Rey. She goes, "Hi, I'm Rey," and he just goes, "I know."
Yeah.
What did Han say to
Solo.
Leia? Right? He gets the "I know" moment. So they're. I mean, I don't know why everyone has to be, all of a sudden focused on the one human female in the film, but you're right though. There's definitely some tension there between her and Kylo Ren, which I think they're trying to build up. But
yeah, they shared a lot of long stares, and having that connection that Snoke set up and everything.
I still think
because he told her, "You're not powerful. How is this happening? You're not powerful to do this."
Right.
He basically said this would kill you to do this.
Which was setting up Luke and his demise,
how are we communicating?
Right.
So.
Which it seems like once that connection has been made, even Snoke dying, it's not severing
because they still had it.
It's almost it's not necessarily a permanent connection.
Because as she was leaving at the end,
she saw him,
and then she shut the door on him, basically.
Part of me still thinks, and again, I shouldn't be doing this because if we've learned nothing, it's don't speculate.
You think they're related?
I think there might still be some relation there because they're building up this love triangle thing between Rose and Finn, and you obviously know that Finn's got the hots for Rey, right? I mean, he's just asking her if she's got a boyfriend in The Force Awakens.
Yeah, exactly.
And the first thing he says when he wakes up is her name and all this stuff, and now this Rose character comes in and is attracted to Finn.
And there was kind of a look, too, when he covered Rose with the blanket. They show Rey kind of looking. She kind of looks like she's kind of smiling, but kind of
he's got somebody else now, and maybe I should kind of back off, right?
And she tells, she's trying to think of what to have Chewie tell Finn.
Yeah.
And Chewie says something, she's like, yeah, that's perfect, or whatever.
Right.
So, what did Chewie come up with?
Right. I don't know. It's they're doing a lot there with those relationships. I still think there's a way that Kylo Ren and Rey I think he's lying. I think he's lying about her parents. I think it's a great thing that she could be a nobody, and that the Force itself brought her into the equation to balance it out, which they're playing a lot on in all of the canon novels, is that the Force in and of itself has free, it's free thinking. It tries to manipulate things.
And in Force Awakens, they show the ship leaving, and on Car Plutt,
somebody dropped her off.
Somebody dropping her off.
Right, which is why she was always looking for somebody.
So, I tend to agree with you that he's manipulating like Snoke was to try to get her to join him.
And as much as I liked The Last Jedi, I definitely feel there was a sense of Rian Johnson sort of opening the door to JJ's office, throwing a grenade in there, closing the door, and walking away.
Totally.
He blew a ton of those threads that JJ was building up out of the water, but that's one of those threads that is still there. And JJ, I think, is going to want to connect something. He's going to want to take the few threads that Rian Johnson left him and work off of what he's got, which is like the Knights of Ren and Rey's parentage. Those things aren't totally settled. And
but it never was really done in a way where it shuts that off, though.
Yeah.
It was a lot of, this isn't going to go the way you think stuff, but it didn't close off the possibility to anything.
Right.
Like, there's a way you could write it to where that stuff could happen.
Right. And the entire Star Wars saga is built on mysterious parentage, right? I mean, so Anakin doesn't know where his dad came from. He doesn't have a father. He's basically birthed by the midichlorians and his mom.
Right.
In the original trilogy, it's Obi-Wan lying to Luke about who his dad is and finding out that he's actually the villain. In this one, it's Rey not knowing who her parents are and then being, I'm hoping, lied to by Kylo Ren that they're nobody and they don't matter.
Right.
You know, and that he's trying to tell her, you have no part in this story, but you matter to me. So why don't we be friends and go take over the galaxy together? It's in his best interest to tell her that. If her parentage is of some relation to Kylo Ren, he's going to want to hide that from her, you know? Maybe. I don't know. But it's...
How would that be, though? Because that would mean she would have to be like Han and Leia's, right?
There's still that
or
look.
Han and
There's
somebody.
There's still that look that Han gives her when they're flying into Takodana, to Maz's castle, where she makes that comment about all the green in the whole galaxy.
Yeah.
And Han just looks at her like, man, I wish I could tell you what I know. You know, like, and Harrison Ford, if that's not what they were intending, he did a damn good job of selling that. Because he looks like he's just, it like destroyed him inside to hear her say that.
Yeah, and that's awful quick to want to have somebody help you on the Falcon
all of a sudden,
stuff.
come and you know, be my second mate, you know, and stuff like that.
After knowing you for a day, basically.
Yeah, there's just too much going on there, and I think again, it's one of those things that JJ's got left open to him that he might.
And Han was a scoundrel, man. He was out doing who knows what.
Why would he want to pick up a girl who's Force sensitive? Why?
Yeah.
I mean, unless she has some relation to him in some way, there's no reason for him to want to do that, right? So, or unless he just knew who she was, you know, he has some knowledge of her parentage. So, you know, and again, playing off the whole siblings not knowing their siblings, they may have kept Ben away from her because if they're siblings, because they didn't want her to, you know, they saw Ben go bad.
She's supposed to be what, like 10 or 15 years, 10 years younger?
He's supposed to be, I think, in the
Force Awakens
30s, and she's like 18.
In the Force Awakens, she was supposed to be, and these happen this happens right after, so she's like 18 or 19.
Right.
So
I think that maybe she could have been, because, and another thing too, they build up in the books that when Leia gave Kylo Ren to Luke, she did not see him for a long time.
Yeah.
He was away from his parents for a long time. And she never knew where he was or what he was doing. Luke, in canon, kept the Jedi a secret from the galaxy. And they didn't, nobody knew the Jedi were back but Leia and a few other people.
Did they cover anywhere how long Leia and Han had been separated?
Pretty much right after Ben went bad. So as soon as he went bad and joined the First Order, they dealt with it. Not
long enough for Han to go have another kid with somebody.
No. Well, it'd have to be Leia because that's where the Force-sensitive part comes from. But but if you think about it, though, they established that Kylo Ren is away from her for a long time, right? He's, from Leia and Han. And their relationship was still a happy one up until the time he goes bad. So if Rey is 18, Kylo Ren is 31, he would have already been with Luke and part of the Jedi by then and may not have really known he had a sister because they couldn't contact Luke or Ben or anything like that. And they do a very good job in the Bloodlines book of establishing that Leia doesn't...
You're saying that you think Leia is Rey's mom?
Why else would she not hug Chewie at the end of Force Awakens? She should have, right? Yeah. And why would she go hug this random girl? Yeah. And that, maybe it was just something that JJ missed and he should have done that, but Han just died.
I know.
I mean, the first person who should get hugged is Chewie. He didn't get the medal in A New Hope and he doesn't get hugged by Leia after Han dies. That was a crime, right? So, you've got all these little hints and stuff built up that she might be their child, but they maybe don't want to tell her that because they don't want to give her the burden of knowing that she is a Skywalker and it's her legacy to basically go bad and her brother's this evil character. Yeah. You also are playing on the fact that they're connected, that they have, her and Kylo Ren have this connection. And, so maybe Kylo Ren doesn't really know he has a sister. He might not be aware of that. Yeah. So he doesn't think anything of it with Rey being a part of the picture. So there's still enough plausibility there for those two to be siblings and for you to go back and pick out pieces from the other two movies and go, oh, now that I know that they're related, these things make sense.
Yeah.
It gives them the option. And I think, again, it's one of those things that JJ was setting up, that it's not completely destroyed or dead now, that he can actually go through and do something with it. So he might actually play with that a bit.
I just don't know if they're going to do it since they already did the whole Leia and Luke finding out their brother and sister thing.
Yeah, I mean,
it would be another callback to the older films, doing the whole reveal.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know, but again, I think this is what I love so much about what Rian Johnson did with The Last Jedi is I don't know.
Yeah, we don't have
no
any
idea,
clue.
right? I mean, I thought we both thought we knew
Yeah.
so much about what The Last Jedi was going to be like after Force Awakens, because obviously they're going this route and they're doing this and they're doing this, and
But not to the point where we couldn't go in with an open mind and enjoy ourselves.
Yeah,
I think that's what's important. You can have what you want to see happen, but you also need to be open for some new stuff too.
Right. Imagine not being open to the idea of Darth Vader being Luke Skywalker's father.
Yeah.
And walking out of Empire just angry and mad that Luke isn't this pure hero, and, you know, there's some conflict in him and there's a dark side to him. You know, I mean, to be that close-minded about it and not accept that movie for how great it really is, it's like you're missing out, right? So I think it's important to go into these things open-minded and just have fun. I think that's the biggest key to it. Movies are supposed to be fun. You're supposed to go in and just enjoy them, you know. And obviously, being fanboys like we are, we're probably, I want to say, I feel like we're probably more critical than I think that people.
I feel like
people
I'm really critical.
Yeah, people would assume that we are. But at the same time, it's just, you know, knowing these films for what their intention is and realizing that they are intended for kids. And, you know, if we're trying to apply all these adult themes to them, we're really doing a disservice to what the true intention of Star Wars is all about. And it's about, you know, grabbing the imagination of children and helping them into this world of sci-fi and fantasy and things like that. I mean, you know, because if it wasn't for Star Wars, I don't think I would have really gotten into The Lord of the Rings and gotten into all these other fantasy, you know, and sci-fi worlds like Blade Runner. You know, I saw Star Wars before Blade Runner, and I love Blade Runner. You know, it was like weird seeing Han Solo as some other dude as a kid, but Blade Runner is like so advanced sci-fi compared to Star Wars. You know, it's this dark, bleak, post-apocalyptic world, but it opened my eyes to this new possibility that you can go into these really complex, futuristic environments and enjoy them. And I think that for a lot of fans, put reality on hold for 5 minutes, go into the movie and just try to have fun, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, and enjoy all aspects of it. And you're entitled to your opinion to be critical, and that's cool. You know, if you have some legitimate gripes about it you don't like, that's, you know, it's great. You know, you have your opinions.
Fine. That's fine, but let other people enjoy it.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yeah, it's just what it's all made for.
One other thing we should talk about as far as episode 9 is how are they gonna explain where Leia is? Because obviously, unless they're lying to us, they've said she's not gonna be in episode 9.
I think that maybe now that I've seen the film, and because when it ended, I immediately was like, the heck are they doing? You know, I mean, you had your out, you had your chance, you know, and they said before the movie came out that her character gets resolved in this film and that they don't necessarily need to include her. She's a huge part of the Resistance now, and I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah,
I'm right there with you.
Luke even says he tells Kylo the battle's just beginning.
Yeah, I legitimately don't have a clue as to what they're going to do there, and it's part of the exciting thing. But I think that maybe enough time will have passed. They've gotten permission from Carrie Fisher's family. You know, Billie Lourd plays actually a much larger part in this movie. Yeah,
she was in this quite a bit.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, she's the blonde-haired, she's got a braid in the back of her hair, resistance fighter in the movie. She aligns herself with Poe. That's actually Carrie Fisher's daughter. And so, but her estate and everybody has said that they're okay with them using her likeness if they need to. And so I think they have permission. Maybe they're trying to take the tasteful approach and say they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And then by the time but episode 9 comes out, enough time will have passed, people will be more okay with it, so they can go ahead and do it. And that was their intention all along. But I just don't know. I mean, they said they used all the footage they had of her. They don't have anything that they saved. That's what they're saying. But yeah, man, she's got a huge part to play in episode 9, and I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know.
I mean, they could do the whole, you know, she's leading the Resistance, she's off doing this or that, and kind of explain it away that way.
Right. Which, I mean, there are some characters from The Force Awakens that survived on the Resistance base that weren't in The Last Jedi that they've explained away, as in were Leia had sent them to the Outer Rim to go and find help. Snap Wexley being one of them.
Right.
He's Greg Grunberg. He was in The Force Awakens, wasn't in this film. So, yeah, he's still alive. He's somewhere. So they could do that. I've also thought that there's a potential that they could do something where Luke and Leia are so connected that she becomes one with the Force with him.
Yeah.
That now that he's gone, she gets pulled, into the Force itself, and that's how they can explain her death. I don't know. But they're going to have to do something with it for sure, because...
Yeah, they can't just write... I don't think they're going to be able to just write that one off.
Or just pretend that she's not there, right? Just go, oh yeah, by the way, Leia's off at the grocery store while we're taking care of the galaxy. I just don't... They're going to have to do something with that. And I'm curious to see where they go.
Poor JJ.
Yeah.
I think what we need to do now, we got a couple of fan questions.
All right.
I think you had them...
I got them queued up.
You got them queued up on your iPhone 5.
You got to point out that I have a really old phone.
Hey, it still works great. You just don't update them, and they work great, guys.
Yeah. Don't do your updates. I haven't, and mine works fantastically. All right, so we've got a question here. Do we read names off on here?
Oh, you can.
All right, I'm going to butcher these, so I apologize. So Joseph Polter said, I've been wondering after reading others' comments online, did Snoke know what Kylo Ren was going to do? His word choices were interesting, saying that I can see him turning the lightsaber and he's going to kill his true enemy. So, so do you think Snoke knew what Kylo Ren was going to do, and did he survive?
I don't think he survived, and I don't think he knew what Kylo was going to do.
I don't think so either, because if you look at it when you watch the film, I made sure to watch the second time. As he's turning his left hand, which was controlling the Skywalker saber, he was also rotating
doing something with his other hand.
His other hand, right? And so
he was masking it from Snoke.
And I think that is also establishing just how powerful Kylo Ren really is with the Force, that he can hide his intentions.
Well, and they've done a lot. Well, they did a lot in Force Awakens, showing that. I mean, one of Kylo's main abilities was like pulling information out of people's minds.
Right.
So he's extremely powerful with mind manipulation.
Right.
So
yeah, to me, it's obviously it's fantasy. They can go wherever they want with that and say that's what he was doing. But
I guess if you're going to ask that, you would have to ask, then if that's true, why would Snoke let him do it and not stop it?
To me, Snoke is the epitome of vanity, right? He's got a destroyed, mangled face, but he wears these elaborate golden robes with golden slippers, because apparently he's in a nursing home. But he's wealthy, he's powerful, he's got this elaborate throne room. He's vain. He's a vain character, and vain. I think vanity in and of itself isn't something that just wants to die, right? So I believe that Snoke had no idea that this was going on, and Snoke is as old as he is. Why would he exist for apparently they said he's apparently like 1,000 years old.
Yeah,
just to get cut in half by his apprentice. I just don't see them going that route with it. I think that's supposed to be a display of just how powerful Kylo Ren really is.
Yeah, that's what I think as well.
Yeah, and the fact that he was just tired of getting made fun of by his master. So.
What was the other one?
We got one that says, what are the chances that we are seeing Snoke use a force projection in the throne room, just like Luke was doing in Octo? I just don't think that's a force projection. He'd have to be pretty darn powerful to allow himself to get like
physically manipulated,
holographically cut in half.
Yeah,
and then you see his hand flop down on the ground
especially
later.
Showing that, like when Kylo put the saber through Luke, it didn't do anything.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, you see that Luke could touch people. He touched Leia, and Yoda touched Luke.
But the saber wouldn't physically affect him.
Right, but it's something that you can choose
why
to
why would the saber physically...
Right.
So like you're saying, it would have to be like some next level stuff to be...
Right. If you can choose to be physical or not in that realm, in that plane of existence, why wouldn't you, if he knew he was going to do it, wouldn't he just make himself unable to be physically touched by things? And so the lightsaber would pass through him, and then he knows Kylo Ren's betraying him.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, wouldn't that be the bigger card to play there of going, oh, knew you were going to try to cut me down, so I'll have my Praetorian Guard kill you now.
I just remembered another cool thing we've never seen before.
What's that?
A long distance use of the Force.
Right.
For when he was the hologram popped up in front of Hux and then he like slammed him on the ground.
Yeah.
That was pretty...
Well, we've seen that in the original trilogy with Vader choking people from a distance.
True.
So, yeah, we've kind of seen some of that.
Yeah.
But that was, I believe, always established that they were within range of each other, like physically in the same system, right?
Yeah.
This one, the supremacy was not out of hyperspace yet.
Yeah.
And Snoke's doing this from a really long distance away. So
I thought that was pretty, as far as showing the extent of his power.
It was a beefed up version of what Vader had done, for sure. And then so we've also got one, did Snoke survive? So a lot of Snoke questions. Again, I don't think so. And then talked about exploring some lore about Snoke. I think we did go over that a bit and how he's not Mace Windu.
Nor Tarkin.
Yeah. So I think he's from the unknown regions.
He's not the Emperor.
No, or Plagueis. I kind of like that whole.
That was a cool,
the
Plagueis theory, I think, was one of the stronger ones that people had.
Yeah, but I just don't think that's the case.
So. No, he's from the unknown regions. They kind of, in the visual dictionary, go over, which is in the mail on its way to me, but I've read about it. It says that they kind of go over how his race is this alien race that can travel vast distances through space and all of these things. So.
Right. Yeah, actually, a good thing to talk about might be where we learn all this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
From being nerds.
Yeah. So I think we've referenced to quite a few things here. So one of the big ones is reading the novels. The canon novels, you're going to pick up a lot of information about characters on. Another thing to do is to get the visual dictionary, which you have coming in the mail.
Yep.
The visual dictionaries are written by Pablo Hidalgo, who is one of the folks at Lucasfilm who sort of runs the story group, and he is one of the people in charge of making sure everything stays in continuity. He writes backstories on items. I mean, like Luke's necklace and Snoke's ring. And so you can get a lot of hints and little trinkets of knowledge from just looking at those books. There's also the art of Star Wars. So there's the art of Rogue One, the art of Force Awakens. So there's pieces in there where you learn about how they develop the characters and give you some hints on where they might be going with them. Also, YouTube is a great resource to...
Yeah, YouTube's awesome. Only thing with YouTube is you gotta be careful when you go down the rabbit hole of all the theory videos.
Well, it's picking your resources.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, I'd like to shout out a couple of them here.
No, go for it.
A guy named Alex on Star Wars Explained. So if you just YouTube Star Wars Explained,
yeah, that's a great one.
His channel is amazing. The guy is really good about differentiating what's canon and what's legends. So he will tell you right off the bat if it's something that's not in the current canon or if it's something that's from the old legends comics and books. He does book reviews of every book. He does ones that don't have spoilers, so you don't get it ruined for you. He'll let you know if they're good. He'll go over and do movie reviews. He's does great work. I also watch The Stupendous Wave once in a while, and his stuff is more lore based, so it's more of the non-canon stuff. He does some canon things as well, but they post a good 3 or 4 minute video every day.
Yeah,
and I get home from work, I settle down after the kids go to bed, and I just listen to 10 minutes of Star Wars stuff.
Yep, I do the same thing, and I
get my fix.
Those are 2 that I would recommend. I'd also recommend the Collider Video Jedi Council. Their stuff's great as well.
Absolutely.
They do a lot of the things with non-spoiler stuff and going over the books, doing reviews and all those different things. So always pick up a lot of good stuff from there. Yeah. So that's definitely a good resource as well.
And the Marvel Comics series that are out now they're all canon. So they're all considered part of the story. They help build the backstory onto the characters, and you get to learn how Vader creates his first lightsaber.
The Vader series, the new Vader series is awesome. Yeah. Highly recommend that one.
Yeah, excellent resources for sure.
Awesome, man. Well, I think this is the longest podcast to date, and I feel like we barely scratched the surface.
We haven't gone even.
So we're
We're tip of the iceberg, man. Not enough to even sink the Titanic. We're not even.
Well, that
close.
just means we're gonna have to do this again and
sure.
make it at least a once a year thing, if not more often.
Yeah. Well, we got a new movie coming out in May, so we can.
Oh, we didn't even talk about Solo.
We did a little bit.
Oh,
little
man.
shout out there to Solo, but that one might. I don't know.
That
Sure
one,
about that film.
yeah, I'll go into it with an open mind, but
Yeah, let's heed our own advice here.
For anybody who wants to, get a little disappointed on that one, look up Anthony Ingruber and his Han Solo. He did
that
in
guy? Yeah.
Age of Adeline, played young Harrison Ford, and also has a video of him being Han Solo doing some lines, and
They got a good reason for not casting that guy.
I would really like to know why they didn't cast him, but I'm going into it with a open mind on the other actor and assuming that they saw something in him. Maybe he had more range, or could have just been that he was a better actor, nailed the audition.
We'll have to see.
All right. I appreciate you being on, brother.
Hey, man, thanks for having me.
All right. Take care, guys. Hope you enjoyed.